Have you ever felt like something was calling you, like an invisible force was guiding you toward a truth you couldn't quite name? That persistent feeling that there's something more, something deeper waiting just beneath the surface of your everyday existence. If you're watching this video right now, in this exact moment, it's not by accident. There are no coincidences in the universe, only perfectly orchestrated encounters between souls and the messages they're finally ready to receive. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you scrolled past countless videos, ignored dozens of recommendations, yet something made you stop here? Something made you click. That something is the ancient recognition between your consciousness and a frequency that resonates with what you've been searching for, perhaps without even knowing you were searching. This is what happens when truth finds you. Not when you find it, but when it finds you. Exactly when you're vibrationally aligned to receive it. But before we dive deeper into this mysterious phenomenon, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Yes, even before you finished watching, because if you've made it this far, your soul already knows why you're here. And please drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from today. It's absolutely fascinating to see how this message reaches seekers from every corner of the world, all drawn to the same frequency at the same time. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Because what we're exploring together is just the beginning of a much larger awakening. Now, here's what most people don't understand about spiritual awakening and divine timing. You see, there's this concept that's been whispered through the ages by mystics, sages, and awakened beings. The idea that certain knowledge, certain truths, remain hidden until the exact moment your consciousness expands enough to hold them. It's like trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. The ocean isn't withholding itself. The teacup simply isn't ready to contain that magnitude of water. But when you become the ocean itself, everything changes. Has this ever happened to you? You read a book years ago and it meant nothing. Then you pick up the same book again, and suddenly every word hits you like lightning, as if the author wrote it specifically for you, for this moment, for what you're going through right now. That's not the book changing. That's you changing. That's your frequency shifting into alignment with wisdom that was always there, waiting patiently for you to arrive at the precise coordinates of consciousness where recognition becomes possible. There's an ancient memory encoded within you, a blueprint of truth that exists beyond everything you've been taught, beyond every limiting belief that was programmed into your mind. You've been walking through life with a map that doesn't quite match the territory, trying to navigate with instruments that were never calibrated for your unique journey. That feeling of something being off, that persistent sense of alienation or disconnection you've carried. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you understand that discomfort. What if I told you that every moment of confusion, every instance of feeling lost or out of place, wasn't evidence of something wrong with you, but rather the most profound evidence of something incredibly right? What if that discomfort was actually your soul's GPS recalibrating, trying to redirect you from the path everyone else told you to walk, toward the path that's authentically yours? The truth is, you haven't been following the wrong map. You've been reading a map designed for someone else's destination. And somewhere deep within you, beneath all the noise and conditioning and should-bes and supposed tos, there's a compass that's been pointing true north all along, just waiting for you to finally pay attention. What you're experiencing right now, this pull toward deeper understanding, this hunger for something more real than the surface reality most people accept without question, this is the beginning of your remembering. And what you're about to remember will change everything about how you see yourself, your purpose, and your place in this vast, mysterious universe we call home. But the question that really matters isn't whether you're ready for this truth. The question is whether you're finally willing to stop asking permission to become who you've always been. You see, there's something happening right now in your reality that most people never fully grasp. The world you're experiencing through your five senses, everything you see, touch, hear, taste, and smell, is nothing more than an echo. It's a reflection, a projection of something far more fundamental, far more powerful. Think of it like this. You've been spending your entire life trying to rearrange the shadows on a wall, completely unaware that the source of light creating those shadows is inside you, has always been inside you, waiting for you to turn around and acknowledge it. This isn't just philosophical poetry or spiritual metaphor. This is the hidden mechanics of how reality actually operates. Your thoughts aren't just random neural firings with no consequence. They're architects. They're literally constructing the framework of your experience. Your emotions aren't just feelings passing through you. They're magnetic forces, attracting and repelling circumstances, people, and opportunities based on the frequency you're broadcasting. You've been operating from the periphery, from the edges of your own power, trying to manipulate external conditions when the entire control panel has been sitting at your core this whole time. If you want more content like this that cuts through the noise and goes straight to what matters, hit that subscribe button. This is where people serious about transformation gather. Most people go through their entire lives believing they're passengers in a vehicle they don't control, victims of circumstance, subject to the whims of fate and chance. But what if everything you've been taught about how reality works is backwards? What if you're not responding to the world, but the world is responding to you? This shift in understanding, this transformation of mindset isn't just empowering. It's the fundamental truth that mystics and quantum physicists have been pointing toward from different directions for centuries. Here's what happens when you truly understand this. You stop waiting. You stop asking the universe or God or fate or whatever name you give to the source of all things for permission to step into your power. You stop negotiating with reality, bargaining for worthiness, pleading for signs that you're allowed to be who you came here to be. The permission slip was signed before time began. The authority was granted the moment your soul chose to incarnate into this physical experience. You didn't come here to audition for a role someone else would approve or reject. You came here as a creator, as an expression of the infinite, disguised as a human being trying to remember its own divinity. But here's where it gets profound. That relentless search you've been on, that endless seeking, that desperate grasping for answers. What if the very act of searching is what's keeping you from what you seek? It's like trying to find your glasses while they're sitting on your face. The truth isn't hiding from you in some distant teaching or secret practice. It's pulsing in your chest right now. It's in the space between your thoughts. It's in the stillness that exists beneath the tornado of questions and doubts spinning in your mind. I want you to try something with me right now, in this moment. Just pause for a second. Close your eyes if you can, or soften your gaze. Take a breath, a real breath, not the shallow survival breaths you've been taking all day, but a deep, intentional breath that reaches all the way down to your center. Feel that? That peace that exists underneath all the noise. That's not emptiness. That's not the absence of something you're supposed to find. That's the presence of everything that is. That's you, the real you, the unconditioned you, the version of yourself that existed before the world told you who you should become. The journey you're on isn't about acquiring something new or becoming something different. It's about remembering, about peeling back the layers of false identity and borrowed beliefs until you reach the core truth that's been waiting there all along. Every decision you've ever made, every path you've walked, every detour that felt like a mistake, all of it has been preparing you for this exact moment of recognition. This isn't where your transformation begins. This is where you realize the transformation has been happening all along, working behind the scenes of your awareness, orchestrating revelations through experiences you couldn't understand at the time. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because what most people miss is the practical application of this understanding. It's one thing to intellectually grasp that you're the creator of your reality, that your inner world shapes your outer experience, but it's another thing entirely to embody that truth in a way that fundamentally alters how you move through your days. The impact of this shift isn't abstract. It's tangible, immediate, and sometimes completely disorienting because everything you thought was solid and permanent suddenly reveals itself as flexible and responsive to your consciousness. If you're feeling this resonance, if something inside you is recognizing these words as truth rather than just information, write in the comments, "I remember." Just those two words, because that simple acknowledgement is the beginning of everything shifting. The paradox that most spiritual seekers never realize is this: the harder you try to reach enlightenment, the further you push it away. Every time you set up a practice with the goal of becoming spiritual, every time you engage in self-improvement with the underlying belief that you're fundamentally flawed and need fixing, you're reinforcing the very illusion that's keeping you trapped. The effort itself becomes the prison. The striving becomes the obstacle, because divinity isn't something you achieve after years of meditation and sacrifice. It's what you are right now, in this imperfect, messy, beautifully human moment. This is the hidden truth that changes everything. You're not on a journey toward wholeness. You started whole. You are whole. The spiritual path isn't about adding something you lack. It's about subtracting the false beliefs that convinced you something was missing in the first place. Every teaching that promises to take you somewhere better, every guru who claims to hold the key to your transformation, every system that says, do this for 10 years and then you'll be enlightened, they're all operating from the same fundamental misconception that there's a distance between where you are and where you need to be. But here's what actually happens when you stop trying so hard. The walls come down. The resistance dissolves. That peace you've been chasing, that connection you've been longing for, that sense of meaning and purpose you've been desperately seeking, it's been there all along, just waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else and recognize it as your natural state. Divinity isn't the destination at the end of your spiritual marathon. It's the ground you're standing on right now. It's the air in your lungs. It's the awareness reading these words. What I'm about to share with you operates on a completely different level than intellectual understanding. This isn't information for your mind to process and file away in the category of interesting spiritual concepts. What's happening as you continue watching, as you continue reading or listening to these words, is a sequential activation. Think of it like tumblers in a lock. Each insight, each moment of recognition clicks something into place deep within your energy field. This is working behind the scenes of your conscious awareness, reaching past your analytical mind directly into the subconscious programming that's been running your life on autopilot. Your subconscious is like a massive database of learned responses, inherited beliefs, and conditioned patterns. Most of what you think, feel, and do every single day isn't coming from conscious choice. It's coming from this underground operating system that was programmed during your formative years by parents, culture, religion, education, and thousands of small moments you don't even remember. These patterns create invisible boundaries around what you believe is possible for you, what you think you deserve, who you imagine yourself to be. And here's the remarkable thing. These patterns can be rewritten. Not through force or willpower, but through exposure to frequencies that remind your system of its original coding before all the conditioning got layered on top. Each revelation you experience while engaging with this content is turning a key in an internal lock you didn't even know existed. Something is releasing. Can you feel it? That slight shift in your chest, that subtle expansion in your awareness, that gentle loosening of tension you've been carrying for so long you forgot it was there, that's layers of conditioning beginning to fall away. This isn't something you need to force or figure out. It's happening naturally, organically, the way a flower opens when the conditions are right. Your only job is to remain open, to stay present, to allow the process to unfold without your ego jumping in, to manage and control the outcome. The impact of this kind of transformation operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, you might notice small changes in how you respond to situations that used to trigger you. Deeper down, entire belief systems that have governed your decisions for decades start to crack and crumble. And at the deepest level, something fundamental shifts in your sense of identity. Who you thought you were begins to dissolve, and what you actually are begins to emerge from beneath the costume you've been wearing. This is why simply watching this video, simply allowing yourself to be present with these words and the frequency they carry, is already changing you. You're not preparing for some future awakening. The awakening is happening now in real time, as your consciousness recognizes itself in the mirror of truth being held up before it. Every moment you remain engaged with this content is a moment your system is recalibrating, adjusting, remembering its original essence before the world told you who to be and how to live. The journey you're on isn't linear, it's spiral. You keep coming back to the same lessons, the same patterns, the same questions, but each time from a higher vantage point, with deeper understanding, with more compassion for yourself and others who are walking their own version of this path. What felt like failure or regression was actually integration. What seemed like going backwards was actually going inward. If you're starting to see your own journey differently now, if these words are rearranging something fundamental in how you understand your path, drop in the comments. I'm ready to remember. That simple declaration is more powerful than you realize. There's a moment that comes for everyone who's meant to walk this path, though most people don't recognize it for what it truly is. It arrives without announcement, without drama, without any external sign that something monumental is shifting. One day, you wake up and the coffee tastes different. The routine that sustained you for years suddenly feels hollow. The conversations that once engaged you now sound like white noise. The goals that motivated you lose their color, their urgency, their meaning. And you can't quite explain why, because nothing terrible has happened. In fact, from the outside, your life might look perfectly fine, even enviable. But inside, something has fundamentally changed. This is the awakening call, and it's both subtle and irrevocable. It's like a fault line cracking deep beneath the surface of your constructed reality. You can't see it happening, but you feel it, this silent earthquake resonating through every layer of your being, shaking loose the foundations you thought were permanent. Most people, when they first experience this, think something is wrong with them. They assume they're depressed, ungrateful, going through a phase, having a crisis. They try to fix it by changing jobs, changing relationships, changing locations, buying things, starting new projects, anything to make that uncomfortable feeling go away. But here's what they don't understand: that discomfort isn't the problem. That dissatisfaction isn't a symptom of dysfunction. It's actually the most sacred whisper your soul has ever spoken to you. It's your inner wisdom saying, this isn't it. This isn't what you came here for. There's more. You know there's more. The tragedy is that our culture has trained us to silence that voice immediately, to medicate it, distract from it, shame it into submission. We're told that wanting more when you already have enough is greedy, that questioning your path when everything looks good on paper is foolish, that feeling empty despite all your blessings is a character flaw. But what if it's the opposite? What if that gnawing dissatisfaction is actually the most honest, most intelligent thing about you? What if it's not a sign that something is wrong with your life, but a sign that Something is profoundly right with your soul, that it hasn't been completely numbed by comfort and conformity, that it still remembers what it came here to do, what it came here to experience, what it came here to become. In the stillness of night, when all the noise and distraction falls away, that's when it gets loudest. That persistent question that creeps in during the quiet hours. Is this all there is? You lie there in the dark, surrounded by everything you were told would make you happy. The career, the relationship, the house, the accomplishments, and yet that question persists, gnawing at you with gentle but relentless insistence. Is this all? Is this really what life is? Wake up, work, consume, distract, sleep, repeat, chase goals, achieve them, set new ones, chase those, accumulate experiences, take the photos, post them, scroll, compare, adjust, perform. Most people mistake this question for ingratitude. They beat themselves up for not being satisfied with what they have, for not appreciating their blessings, for always wanting something more. They think there's something broken in them that won't let them just be content like everyone else seems to be. But that question, is this all, isn't coming from your ego's greed or your mind's restlessness. It's coming from your true essence, recognizing that it cannot be contained in the cage of a superficial existence. It's your soul tapping on the walls of the box you've built around it, gently at first, then more, insistently reminding you that you're infinite consciousness wearing a human disguise, and the disguise has become so convincing that you've forgotten it's just a costume. This question is the spark of higher consciousness breaking through the concrete of conditioning. It's evidence that beneath all the layers of who you've been told to be, who you've tried to become, who you've performed as for all these years, there's something authentic and wild and vast that refuses to be domesticated. Your true self won't fit into the templates provided by society. It won't be satisfied with surface-level living. It won't stop asking for depth, for meaning, for truth, no matter how many times you try to appease it with substitutes. The transformation that's beginning in you now isn't about getting more stuff or achieving bigger goals or finally figuring out the perfect life strategy. It's about answering that question honestly, not with words, but with your whole life, not with explanations, but with choices that honor the depth calling you. The impact of actually listening to this question instead of running from it is that your entire relationship with reality begins to shift. What seemed important fades. What seemed impossible suddenly feels necessary. The hidden truth behind all your striving reveals itself. You weren't actually looking for success or security or validation. You were looking for permission to be real, to be whole, to be yourself without apology. If this question has been keeping you awake at night, if you've been feeling this sacred discomfort and didn't know what it meant until now, write in the comments, "There is more." Just those 3 words, and watch what shifts inside you when you speak that truth out loud. Once you start asking that question, once you begin acknowledging that there's something more calling you, the universe starts responding in ways that are impossible to ignore. But here's the thing, it's been responding all along. You just weren't paying attention because you were too busy trying to make the old life work, too invested in the story you'd been telling yourself about who you were and what you wanted. The moment you become even slightly receptive to a different truth, suddenly the signs are everywhere. That song that keeps playing, the one that stops you in your tracks every single time you hear it, carrying a message you can't quite articulate but feel in your bones, that's not random. That book that literally falls off the shelf when you walk past, or the one that 5 different people mention to you in the same week, or the title that keeps appearing in your social media feed until you finally pay attention. That's not coincidence. That conversation with a stranger in a coffee shop that somehow addresses the exact question you'd been wrestling with in private, or that chance encounter that opens a door you didn't even know existed. These aren't accidents in a chaotic universe. They're synchronicities, deliberate winks from the cosmos, breadcrumbs on a trail that's been laid out specifically for you. The universe is constantly conspiring to shake you from your lethargy, to wake you up from the trance of ordinary life. But it speaks in whispers and symbols, in patterns and parallels, in a language that bypasses your logical mind and speaks directly to your intuition. Most people dismiss these moments as mere coincidence, because accepting them as meaningful would require a complete transformation of their worldview. It would mean acknowledging that reality is far more mysterious, far more responsive, far more intelligent than they've been taught to believe. It would mean admitting that they're not just random beings stumbling through a meaningless existence, but active participants in a cosmic conversation that's been happening since before they were born. Pay attention to your dreams, especially the ones that recur, the ones that wake you up with that peculiar feeling of having been somewhere significant, even if you can't remember the details. Your subconscious is processing information your conscious mind isn't ready to handle directly. It's showing you symbols, scenarios, and possibilities that your waking self would immediately reject or rationalize away. Those recurring dreams aren't just your brain sorting through the day's events. They're downloads, transmissions, messages from deeper layers of your own consciousness trying to get your attention. But here's what most people miss in their spiritual journey. They want the signs to be comfortable. They want synchronicity to feel magical and uplifting, like finding a feather or seeing repeating numbers. And sometimes it is. But more often, the universe's way of waking you up involves discomfort. It involves that mounting frustration you've been feeling, that sensation of being trapped in a meaningless routine, that growing awareness that your life, despite looking successful from the outside, feels hollow from the inside. This frustration isn't a problem to be solved. It's fuel for your transformation. It's the pressure building up that will eventually propel you into a completely different orbit of existence. Think about it. If you were perfectly comfortable, if everything felt meaningful and fulfilling, would you have any motivation to change, to grow, to become something more? Comfort is the enemy of evolution. Discontent is the engine of awakening. There's tremendous courage required to admit what you're really feeling, especially when you have everything you're supposed to want. It takes guts to say, I have the job, the relationship, the house, the lifestyle that I worked so hard for, and I feel empty. Our culture has no patience for that admission. You'll be called ungrateful, privileged, spoiled. People will line up to tell you how good you have it, how others would kill for your problems, how you should just be happy with what you've got. But those people are speaking from their own fear, from their own desperate need to believe that if they just acquire enough, achieve enough, secure enough, they'll finally feel satisfied. You're being given a gift that many people never receive, the awareness that external accumulation will never fill an internal void. That realization, as painful as it is liberation. It means you can stop chasing substitutes and start pursuing the real thing. Your spirit is alive and hungry for truth, and that hunger is the most honest thing about you. Honor it, feed it. Follow it even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy for walking away from what looks like security and success. The impact of embracing this frustration rather than suppressing it is profound. You stop trying to fix your life and start allowing it to transform. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what's trying to emerge through me? The hidden truth behind your discontent reveals itself. You weren't meant to be comfortable. You were meant to be awake. If you're feeling this sacred frustration right now, if you recognize it as the fuel it actually is, put in the comments, I feel the pressure. Those 4 words acknowledge that you're in the crucible, in the heat, in the transformative moment before everything changes. When the pressure reaches its peak, when the frustration has built to a point where you can no longer ignore it, something inevitable happens. The structures start to crumble. Everything you built your life upon, every belief you held as absolute truth, every identity you constructed so carefully, it all begins to crack. And this is where most people panic. This is where the real journey either begins or gets abandoned because the fear becomes too intense. What's happening in these moments feels like your world is falling apart. The career path that made perfect sense suddenly seems meaningless. The relationship that once felt solid now reveals its fundamental incompatibilities. The beliefs about yourself, about life, about reality itself, they start showing fractures you can't unsee. Your values shift, your priorities rearrange themselves without your permission. People you thought would be in your life forever start feeling like strangers, and strangers start feeling like family. Nothing makes sense anymore in the way it used to, and the instinct is to fight it, to try desperately to hold everything together, to shore up the walls that are crumbling, to maintain the life you've known because at least it was familiar, even if it wasn't fulfilling. But here's the hidden truth operating behind the scenes of this collapse. This isn't punishment. This isn't the universe abandoning you or evidence that you've somehow failed. This is the necessary deconstruction that must precede every authentic creation. You cannot build something genuinely new on a foundation of old beliefs and outdated identities. You cannot become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you've been. The earth must be turned, broken up, churned before a new seed can take root. What feels like devastation is actually preparation. Think about it in terms of construction. Before you can build something magnificent, you often have to demolish what's currently standing. The demolition phase is messy, chaotic, dusty, disorienting. If you walked onto a construction site during demolition, you'd think nothing good could possibly come from this destruction. But the builders know that this chaos is temporary and necessary. They're clearing space for something better. That's exactly what's happening in your life right now. But because you're standing in the middle of the demolition site, all you can see is the rubble. You're in what I call the sacred space between, that liminal threshold where what was has ended, but what will be hasn't yet taken form. It's the gap between chapters, the pause between breaths, the silence between notes that gives music its power. This space feels like a void, and the emptiness can be terrifying. Your mind desperately wants to fill it with something, anything, just to stop the discomfort of not knowing. You're tempted to rush into the next thing, to grab onto a new identity, to fill the void with distraction or denial or premature decisions. But this void is actually pure potential. It's the blank canvas before the painting, the silence before the symphony, the darkness before dawn. Every possibility exists here simultaneously. The confusion you're experiencing isn't weakness or failure. It's evidence that your old compass has stopped working. That compass was calibrated by ego and conditioning, programmed by other people's expectations and society's blueprints. It was never actually yours. It was guiding you toward destinations that were never meant for you. And now that it's malfunctioning, now that you can no longer trust the directions you've been following, you're finally in a position to discover a different kind of navigation. This is the prelude, the preparation for a deeper guide to take command, your intuition, your inner knowing, your soul's wisdom. It's been waiting patiently for the false guidance system to break down so it could finally be heard. But its voice is quiet compared to the ego's shouting. It speaks in whispers, in feelings, in subtle pulls and gentle nudges. You couldn't hear it before because there was too much noise, too much certainty, too much investment in the old way. Now, in this confusing silence, in this sacred emptiness, you're finally in a position to hear it. The transformation happening here operates on every level of your being. Your mindset is being restructured from the ground up. The decisions you make from this point forward will come from a completely different place than the decisions that led you here. The impact of staying present with this discomfort, of not rushing to fill the void or reconstruct the old reality in a slightly different form, cannot be overstated. This is where real metamorphosis happens. This is where the caterpillar dissolves completely before the butterfly emerges. The dissolution isn't optional if you want the wings. What you're experiencing right now is one of the most important phases of any spiritual awakening. The ego death, the dark night, the great unraveling. It doesn't feel sacred while you're in it. It feels like confusion, like loss, like everything falling apart. But you're not falling apart. You're falling together in a new configuration, one that's aligned with truth rather than conditioning, with essence rather than performance. If you're in this space right now, if you recognize yourself in this void between worlds, write in the comments, "I'm in the between." That acknowledgement alone can bring comfort, knowing you're not lost, you're exactly where you need to be for what comes next. What you need to understand about this phase is that you're going through a death, not a physical death, but a symbolic one that feels just as real, just as profound, and just as painful. You're mourning the loss of versions of yourself that no longer exist. The person you thought you were, the person you tried to become, the person everyone expected you to be. And here's what nobody tells you about spiritual transformation. It hurts. It's supposed to hurt. You're not doing it wrong if you feel grief. You're doing it exactly right. There's this toxic positivity in spiritual circles that wants to skip over the messy parts, that wants to jump straight from awakening to enlightenment without acknowledging the devastation in between. People post their breakthroughs and their manifestations, but they rarely show you the nights they spent crying, confused, feeling like they'd lost everything including themselves. But the grief is sacred. The sadness is necessary. You cannot release what you don't first acknowledge you're losing, even if the old version of you was built on false foundations, even if that identity was limiting and painful. It was still yours. You invested years, maybe decades, into becoming that person. You made countless decisions based on that identity. You built relationships, careers, entire lives around that version of yourself. And now it's gone, or going, dissolving like a sandcastle in the tide. Of course you're grieving. How could you not? The mistake most people make is trying to rush through this grief. They want to hurry up and feel better, to get to the good part, to arrive at the new and improved version of themselves without having to sit in the uncomfortable middle. They fill the void immediately with new projects, new relationships, new identities, anything to avoid feeling the emptiness where the old self used to be. But that's like trying to plant a garden before you finish clearing the weeds. The new growth gets tangled up with the old patterns, and you end up recreating the same problems in a slightly different form. True strength, the kind that actually transforms you, rather than just rearranging your circumstances, lies in your willingness to remain in the flames, to sit with the discomfort, to let yourself feel the full weight of what you're releasing without immediately grabbing onto something else. This isn't about wallowing or getting stuck in the pain. It's about honoring the magnitude of what's happening. You're not just changing your mind about a few things. You're undergoing a fundamental shift in consciousness. And that process deserves your respect, your patience, your presence. Walk with your sadness like it's an old friend who's finally being honest with you. Don't push it away. Don't shame it. Don't try to meditate it into submission or positive think it out of existence. Just let it be there, moving through you like weather moving through the sky. Emotions are meant to move. That's why we call them emotions, energy in motion. When you resist them, they get stuck. When you allow them, they complete their cycle and naturally transform into something else. And here's what happens when you give yourself permission to fully feel this symbolic death. In the center of the whirlwind, in the eye of the storm where everything is falling apart, you start to hear something. It's quiet at first, barely audible beneath all the noise of your thoughts and fears and grief. But it's there, and it's been there all along, just waiting for you to get quiet enough to notice it. This voice doesn't shout. It doesn't argue or justify or explain. It doesn't speak from your head in that familiar tone of anxiety and overthinking. It whispers from somewhere deeper, from your heart, from your gut, from that place in you that knows things without knowing how it knows them. This is your authentic voice, your essential truth, the part of you that exists beyond every story you've told yourself, beyond all the conditioning and programming and should-bes. The revelation that changes everything is this: you've been listening to the wrong voice your entire life. The loud one, the insistent one, the one that sounds so certain and so urgent. That's not your truth. That's fear wearing a mask of authority. That's ego pretending to be wisdom. That's conditioning masquerading as common sense. Your real voice, the one that actually knows who you are and what you need and where you're meant to go, sounds nothing like that. It's calm. It's clear. It doesn't demand or manipulate or threaten. It simply observes and knows and gently suggests. This authentic voice has a quality that's unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. It brings peace, even when it's guiding you toward change that looks scary from the outside. It doesn't agitate you into action through fear. It doesn't convince you with logic and persuasion. It just resonates with truth so pure that your entire being recognizes it, even if your mind doesn't understand it yet. If you're starting to distinguish between the noise in your head and the knowing in your heart, if you're beginning to hear that quiet voice beneath everything else, drop in the comments. I hear it now. That simple acknowledgement strengthens your connection to that inner wisdom. Learning to distinguish between these two voices, the ego and the essence, becomes the most critical skill in your entire transformation. Because here's what makes it tricky. The ego is incredibly sophisticated. It's been with you your whole life, learning your patterns, studying your weaknesses, mastering the art of sounding like wisdom when it's actually just fear dressed up in reasonable clothing. The ego speaks with urgency, with that edge of anxiety that makes everything feel like a crisis that requires immediate action. It deals in absolutes, in black and white thinking, in certainties that promise if you just do this one thing, follow this one path, make this one decision, you'll finally be safe. And that's the key word right there, safe. The ego's entire agenda is survival and security. It wants to keep you small, predictable, and protected from any possibility of failure, rejection, or pain. It will trade your freedom, your growth, your authentic expression for the illusion of safety every single time. It sounds like this. Don't quit your job. What if you can't find another one? Don't tell them how you really feel. What if they leave? Don't try that new thing. Remember what happened last time you took a risk? It's the voice of limitation, masquerading as common sense, the voice of fear, pretending to be practical wisdom. Your essence, on the other hand, doesn't operate from that frequency at all. It doesn't speak the language of threat and protection. When your essential self communicates, it feels completely different in your body. There's a softness to it, a gentleness that doesn't need to convince or persuade. It's not trying to sell you on anything or manipulate you into a decision. It simply knows, and that knowing resonates through your entire being like a tuning fork, finding its perfect pitch. It feels like a quiet yes that reverberates in your chest, in your gut, in that deep place where truth lives beyond the reach of thoughts. This essential voice doesn't need logical explanations or rational justifications. It bypasses your analytical mind completely and speaks directly to something older and wiser within you. You might not be able to explain why you know something is right. You just know. You feel it as a visceral certainty that requires no external validation. And here's the beautiful paradox. Even when this voice guides you towards something scary, something that would make the ego absolutely panic, there's still a fundamental peace underneath it, a trust, a sense of rightness that transcends circumstances. But here's the problem most people encounter. They can't hear their essence clearly because there's too much noise. The ego is loud, constant, relentless. It fills every moment with commentary, analysis, judgment, planning, worrying. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a room full of people shouting. The whisper is there, it's always been there, but you can't distinguish it from the chaos. This is why creating intentional spaces of silence becomes absolutely essential in your journey. Not optional, not a nice addition to your spiritual practice. Essential. You have to deliberately turn down the volume on everything else so that subtle voice can be heard. This means carving out time in your day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, to sit in complete stillness. Not to meditate with a specific technique, not to achieve some particular state, not to become enlightened, just to sit and observe. Watch the parade of thoughts moving through your consciousness like clouds drifting across the sky. Notice how some thoughts feel heavy and anxious, spinning in circles, creating drama and urgency. Notice how other thoughts feel different, lighter, clearer, arriving like gifts from somewhere beyond your conscious mind. The anxious chatter sounds like this: I should be doing something productive right now. This is a waste of time. I have so much to do. Did I remember to respond to that email? What if they think I'm ignoring them? I'm not good enough at this. Everyone else can meditate better than me. Why can't I quiet my mind? That's the ego, uncomfortable with silence, filling every gap with noise because stillness threatens its dominance. But if you stay with it, if you don't engage with that chatter or try to fight it, if you just let it be there without giving it power, something else starts to emerge. Little flashes of insight that feel like they came from nowhere. Sudden clarity about a situation you've been overthinking. A deep knowing about what you need to do next, even if it doesn't make logical sense. That's your authentic voice breaking through the static. It doesn't debate with you. It doesn't present a case with pros and cons. It simply is. And you recognize it the same way you'd recognize an old friend in a crowd, instantly, without question. The transformation in your decision-making, in your entire way of navigating life, when you start operating from this place, is extraordinary. Your choices stop being driven by fear and start being guided by truth. The impact ripples out into every area of your existence because you're no longer fighting against yourself, no longer trying to reason your way into the right answer. You're accessing a deeper intelligence that already knows. If you're committed to creating this space in your life, to learning this crucial distinction between ego and essence, write in the comments, I choose stillness. That declaration is more powerful than you realize right now. Once you start creating space to hear your authentic voice, one of the first things it reveals is how exhausting your life has become because of your desperate need to control everything. You've been operating like a sculptor trying to carve the ocean, spending every ounce of your energy, attempting to mold, manage, and manipulate every detail of your existence into a shape that feels safe. You plan obsessively. You anticipate problems. You create backup plans for your backup plans. You try to account for every variable, control every outcome, manage every risk. And at the end of each day, you're depleted, anxious, and somehow further from the peace you're trying to create. This need for dominion over your life, this compulsion to be the puppet master pulling all the strings, it's not actually power, it's fear. It's a symptom of a deep, often unconscious terror of existence's sacred current, of the natural flow of life that moves with an intelligence far beyond what your limited human mind can comprehend. You're afraid that if you let go, even for a moment, everything will fall apart. That without your constant vigilance and intervention, your life will spiral into chaos. That you're the only thing holding it all together. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Life is not an equation to be solved. It's not a problem requiring your constant management. It's a mystery to be lived with open arms and open hands. The universe operated for billions of years before you arrived, orchestrating the dance of galaxies and the precise unfolding of evolution without any input from you whatsoever. The same intelligence that knows how to beat your heart and digest your food and heal your wounds without any conscious effort from you. That intelligence is also guiding the larger patterns of your life if you just get out of the way and let it. Every time you try to force an outcome, every time you grip tighter trying to make something happen according to your timeline and your specifications, you're actually closing yourself off from possibilities far greater than anything your limited perspective could envision. Your ego believes it knows what's best for you, but it's making decisions based on past experiences, inherited fears, and a fundamentally flawed belief in separation. It doesn't have access to the bigger picture. It can't see the connections being woven behind the scenes, the synchronicities being orchestrated, the doors being prepared to open at exactly the right moment. This is where the concept of surrender becomes crucial. And I need you to understand what surrender actually means, because it's been completely misunderstood in our culture. Surrender is not giving up. It's not passive resignation to circumstances you don't like. It's not about becoming a doormat or abandoning your goals or sitting around waiting for life to happen to you. Real surrender is an active, conscious alliance with life's intelligence. It's the decision to stop exhausting yourself swimming against the current and instead turn your body in the direction the river is already flowing. Think about it this way. When you're in the ocean and a wave is coming toward you, you have two choices. You can plant your feet, brace yourself, and try to withstand the force of the wave crashing into you, which will knock you over and tumble you around. Or you can dive into the wave, allowing it to pass over you while you move with its energy, emerging on the other side unharmed. That's the difference between resistance and surrender. Both require action, but one exhausts you while the other works with the natural forces at play. When you release your death grip on the how it's supposed to happen, how it's supposed to look, how long it's supposed to take, you become an open channel. You shift from being a dam blocking the flow to being a riverbed allowing the water to move through you. And this is when the magic of synchronicity, which you noticed earlier in your journey, amplifies exponentially. Opportunities appear that you never could have planned for. People show up with exactly what you need at exactly the right time. Solutions emerge that your controlling mind never would have considered because they don't follow the logical path you were trying to force. The transformation in your life when you move from control to conscious surrender is immediate and profound. The tension in your body releases, the anxiety in your mind quiets. You're no longer carrying the impossible burden of being responsible for outcomes you never had the power to guarantee in the first place. Your decisions become clearer because they're not clouded by fear and the need for certainty. You take inspired action when it feels right, and you rest when it feels right, trusting that both are part of the process. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop having preferences or desires. It means you hold those preferences lightly, like a bird in your open palm instead of clenched in your fist. You still take action, but your action comes from alignment and inspiration rather than from force and fear. You're working with life instead of against it, collaborating with the intelligence that's been guiding you all along. If this resonates with something you've been feeling, if you're ready to release the exhausting burden of control, put in the comments, "I surrender to the flow." Watch what shifts inside you when you speak those words with intention. When you begin to surrender control and trust the flow, something remarkable happens. You naturally start collapsing into the present moment. And this is where everything we've been talking about converges into actual lived experience. Because here's what most people miss. All that suffering, all that anxiety, all that exhaustion from trying to control everything, it exists only because you're mentally time traveling. You're either replaying the past or rehearsing the future, and neither of those timelines actually exist right now. Take this moment, this exact instant, as you're watching or listening to these words. Your breath is flowing in and out of your lungs. That's happening. Now, your heart is beating. That's happening now. There are sensations in your body, sounds in your environment, maybe the feeling of your feet on the ground or your body in a chair. All of that is happening now. This is the only moment that truly exists. The past is finished. It's nothing more than an echo, a memory, a story you tell yourself about what happened. The future hasn't arrived, it's just a projection, a fantasy or fear your mind is generating based on incomplete information. But where do you spend most of your mental energy? You're either stuck in the past, ruminating on what you should have said, what you should have done differently, how things could have gone better, replaying conversations and situations that are over and can't be changed. Or you're catapulted into the future, worrying about what might happen, planning for scenarios that may never occur, trying to solve problems that don't exist yet and might not ever exist. And in both cases, you're missing the only thing that's actually real, this moment, right here, right now. Watch how suffering generates itself when you understand this mechanism. A thought arises about something that happened last week, last year, 10 years ago. Maybe you said something you regret, made a decision that didn't work out, hurt someone you care about. That event is over. It's done. It exists only in memory. But the moment that thought appears in your consciousness, your body responds as if it's happening again right now. Your chest tightens. Guilt floods through you. Shame colors everything. You're suffering, but you're suffering over something that isn't actually happening. You're suffering over a story, a mental construct, an echo of the past. Or a thought projects forward. What if this doesn't work out? What if they reject me? What if I fail? What if something bad happens? None of these things are happening right now. They're imaginary scenarios your mind is creating, usually based on past experiences or inherited fears. But your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. Your nervous system activates. Anxiety floods in. You're suffering over a projection, a phantom, a future that may never materialize and probably won't look anything like what you're imagining anyway. Now bring your full attention to this present moment. Don't think about it, actually do it. Notice your breath, feel the sensations in your body, become aware of the sounds around you. In this moment, stripped of all the stories and narratives your mind wants to overlay, where is the problem? What's actually wrong right now, in this specific instant? Usually, if you're honest, the answer is nothing. Right now, you're okay. Right now, you're breathing. Right now, you exist. The drama, the suffering, the anxiety, they only arise when you leave the now and travel mentally to times that aren't real. This isn't about denying that difficult things have happened or that challenges exist in your life. This is about recognizing that the suffering you experience is almost never about what's actually happening. It's about the story your mind is telling about what happened or what might happen. The event itself is one thing. The narrative you build around it is something else entirely, and that narrative, that mental drama, is optional. The transformation that occurs when you train yourself to return again and again to the present moment is profound and immediate. Suddenly there's space, there's room to breathe. The weight lifts because you're not carrying yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's anxieties anymore. You're just here, dealing with what's actually in front of you, which is always manageable in the moment. It's only when you pile up all your past mistakes and all your future fears into this moment that it becomes overwhelming. The impact of living from presence, rather than from mental time travel, changes everything about how you make decisions, how you relate to Others, how you experience your own life. You're no longer reactive, triggered by memories or terrified of possibilities. You're responsive, present, available to what is. This is where real power lives, not in controlling outcomes, but in being fully present with whatever arises. The journey from constant mental noise to present moment awareness isn't about achieving some perfect state of Zen. It's about catching yourself when you drift into past or future and gently bringing yourself back to now, over and over again. Each return is a victory. Each moment of presence is a revelation of what's always been available to you. If you're beginning to see how much of your suffering has been self-generated through time travel, write in the comments, "I'm coming back to now." That simple statement is a powerful anchor. As you practice returning to the present moment more frequently, something else starts becoming visible, something that might be even more unsettling than realizing how much you've been suffering over mental time travel. You begin to see that the person you think you are, the identity you've been defending and maintaining all these years, is also a story. It's a narrative you've been telling yourself and others for so long that you've completely confused it with truth. Think about the statements you make about yourself on a regular basis. I'm not good with money. I'm an anxious person. I'm not creative. I'm bad at relationships. I'm just not the type who can fill in the blank with whatever limitation you've claimed as part of your identity. You say these things with such certainty, such conviction, as if they're facts about reality rather than what they actually are. Stories woven together from past experiences, other people's judgments, moments of failure, inherited beliefs and wounds that never fully healed. Your ego has constructed this narrative as a survival mechanism. It takes all these scattered experiences and threads them into a coherent story about who you are, because having a fixed identity, even a limiting one, feels safer than the truth of your vast, undefined potential. The ego would rather know exactly who you are, complete with all your flaws and boundaries clearly marked, than face the terrifying freedom of not knowing, of being infinite possibility wearing a temporary human form. But here's what happens with this story. You start living into it. You make decisions that confirm it. You notice evidence that supports it and ignore evidence that contradicts it. You surround yourself with people who reflect it back to you. The story becomes self-fulfilling, self-reinforcing, until you can't imagine being anyone other than this character you've created. And the real you, the essence that existed before all the stories got layered on top, gets buried so deep you forget it was ever there. Every time you catch yourself saying, "I am like this," or "That's just who I am," I want you to pause and question it. Really question it. Is this actually your truth, or is this just the comfortable disguise you've learned to wear? Is this who you genuinely are at your core, or is this just who you became in response to circumstances, to protect yourself, to fit in, to survive? The mind is incredibly good at confusing repetition with truthfulness. You've thought a particular thought about yourself 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times, and so it seems obviously, undeniably true. But a lie told repeatedly doesn't become truth. It just becomes familiar. What if you're not actually an anxious person, but rather someone who learned anxiety as a coping mechanism in an unpredictable environment? What if you're not bad with money, but you're just repeating patterns you absorbed from parents who struggled financially? What if you're not uncreative, but you were told once by someone whose opinion mattered that you weren't artistic, and you've been living inside that judgment ever since? The transformation that becomes possible when you start separating your essential self from your constructed narrative is extraordinary. This process of questioning your identity feels destabilizing at first because your ego interprets it as a threat. If you're not who you think you are, then who are you? The mind rushes in to fill that void with another story, another identity, hopefully a better one this time. But that's still the same trap, just with different decorations. The liberation doesn't come from creating a new and improved story about yourself. It comes from recognizing that you are not any story at all. You are the consciousness witnessing all the stories, the awareness in which all these identities arise and dissolve, like characters in a dream. Behind every "I am" statement is an assumption that's worth examining. Who decided this about you? When did you first believe it? What evidence are you using to support it? And most importantly, what becomes possible if you let it go? The impact of releasing these false identities ripples through every aspect of your existence. Relationships shift because you're no longer playing the same predictable role. Career paths open up because you're not limited by what someone like you is supposed to do. Creativity flows because you're not constrained by stories about what you can or cannot create. The hidden truth operating behind the scenes of this realization is that you've been defending a prison and calling it your home. You've been protecting limitations and calling them your personality. Every time someone challenged your story, you pushed back, gathered evidence, built your case for why this is just who you are. But what you were actually defending was your cage, terrified of the vast open space that exists when you drop the story entirely. If you're ready to start questioning the narrative you've been living inside, write in the comments, "I am not my story." Those 5 words begin the process of separation between who you truly are and who you've been pretending to be. As you begin welcoming back those exiled parts of yourself, as you start integrating what you've kept in shadow, you naturally arrive at one of the most counterintuitive truths in the entire journey. Real power doesn't come from force. It comes from yield. Everything you've been taught about success, about achievement, about making things happen in your life has been built on the idea of pushing, striving, fighting, conquering. You set goals and attack them. You identify obstacles and overcome them. You meet resistance with more resistance. And maybe that's worked for you to some degree, but at what cost? How exhausted are you from constantly battling your way through life? There exists a completely different kind of force, one that operates on a principle that seems backwards to everything your ego believes. This force isn't obtained by fighting but by yielding. It's not found in resistance but in deep acceptance. This is the path of surrender, and it's the supreme art of flowing with life's intelligence rather than constantly struggling against it. But we need to be very clear about what surrender actually means, because the word itself triggers something in most people. It sounds like defeat, like giving up, like letting life run you over while you passively accept whatever happens. That's not surrender. That's resignation. Real surrender is an active, conscious alliance with the current of existence that's always flowing toward expansion, toward growth, toward your highest good even when it doesn't look that way from your limited perspective. It's the decision to stop exhausting yourself swimming upstream and instead turn your body in the direction the river is already moving. You're not giving up your agency or your power. You're aligning your will with a much greater intelligence that sees possibilities and connections your individual mind could never perceive. Think about flexibility in nature. How the willow tree survives storms that destroy the mighty oak. The oak is strong, rigid, impressive in its stature. When the wind comes, it stands firm, refusing to bend, and that very rigidity becomes its downfall. The storm snaps it in half. But the willow, the weeping willow by the furious river, it bends. It yields to the wind, allowing the storm to pass through it rather than breaking against it. And when the storm is over, the willow returns to its natural position, completely intact. While the oak lies splintered on the ground, this is what surrender looks like in practice. It's not weakness, it's conscious flexibility. It's the ability to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing yourself, to move with circumstances rather than being destroyed by them. Every time life brings you something unexpected, something that doesn't match your plan or your preference, you have a choice. You can be the oak, standing rigid in your expectations, insisting things should be different, breaking yourself against what is. Or you can be the willow, bending with what's happening, finding the wisdom in the detour, trusting that this too is part of your journey even if you can't see why yet. The transformation in your experience of life when you shift from resistance to flexibility is immediate and tangible. Stress decreases because you're not constantly at war with reality. Creativity increases because you're working with what is, rather than mourning what isn't. Opportunities appear because you're fluid enough to recognize and move through doors you didn't even know existed. Your relationships improve because you're not rigidly demanding that people be who you need them to be. You're allowing them to be who they are and responding from that truth. This doesn't mean you become a pushover or lose your boundaries or accept mistreatment. Flexibility isn't the same as being spineless. The willow has deep roots. It's grounded in its essence while being flexible in its expression. You can be absolutely clear about your values, your needs, your non-negotiables, while remaining flexible about how those things manifest. You can have strong preferences while holding them lightly enough that you don't suffer when reality has other plans. The hidden truth working behind the scenes here is that the universe is always responding to your energy, not your actions. When you're in resistance, clenched against what is, desperate for things to be different, you're broadcasting a frequency of lack of struggle, of separation from what you want. That frequency attracts more of the same. But when you surrender, when you relax into flexibility and trust, your energy shifts to acceptance, to flow, to alignment. And from that state, life responds with synchronicities, with ease, with support you couldn't have orchestrated through force. The impact of mastering this art of conscious surrender ripples through every decision you make, every challenge you face, every relationship you navigate. You stop breaking yourself against circumstances you can't change and start flowing with the intelligence that's always been guiding you toward exactly where you need to be. If you're beginning to understand surrender not as defeat, but as the ultimate form of power, write in the comments, "I bend but don't break." That simple acknowledgement shifts your relationship with everything that's coming. When you practice surrender and flexibility, when you start bending with life rather than breaking against it, you might expect everything to suddenly feel peaceful and easy. But often what happens instead is that another voice gets louder, more insistent, more aggressive in its commentary on your life. This is the critical mind, and it's been with you so long you've probably mistaken it for your own thoughts, your own assessment of reality. But it's not. It's an echo, a recording, a collection of old programs running on autopilot. Listen carefully to this voice. Really pay attention to what it says and how it says it. You're doing it wrong. That was stupid. Everyone else is better at this than you. You'll never succeed. Look at them. Why can't you be more like that? It's relentless in its commentary, constantly comparing, judging, condemning every move you make. It points out your flaws with surgical precision. It reminds you of every past failure. It predicts every future disaster. And here's what you need to understand. This voice thinks it's protecting you. The critical mind is an outdated survival mechanism, a primitive alarm system that evolved in an environment where social rejection could mean death, where one mistake could end your existence. So it learned to scan constantly for threats, to anticipate problems, to keep you small and safe by never letting you forget every way you might fail. In the ancestral environment, this might have kept you alive. In modern life, it's just keeping you imprisoned in a cage of your own making. This internal critic doesn't have your growth or happiness in mind. It has your survival in mind, which to the primitive brain means staying exactly where you are, never taking risks, never standing out, never attempting anything that might result in failure or rejection. It would rather you be miserable and safe than fulfilled and exposed. And the cruelest part is that you've been listening to this voice for so long, giving it so much authority, that you think it's telling you the truth about who you are and what you're capable of. But here's the transformation that happens when you start recognizing this voice for what it is: just old programming, just inherited fear, just a survival mechanism that's no longer serving you. You can begin to disentangle yourself from its grip. You can hear the criticism and choose not to believe it. You can notice the judgment and let it pass like a cloud. You don't have to fight it or silence it by force. You just stop giving it the power to dictate your decisions and define your worth. And as you practice this separation between who you truly are and what the critical mind keeps telling you, something else starts becoming clear. All that pain you've been carrying, all those difficult experiences you've endured, they weren't random punishments or evidence that life has it out for you. Pain visits every single life without exception, not as punishment but as an implacable teacher. It arrives wrapped in darkness, disguised as something terrible, but it's carrying lessons you couldn't have learned any other way. What you're feeling right now as an open wound, that thing that still hurts when you touch it, that experience you wish had never happened, it contains within itself the seed of deeper understanding. The suffering you've been through isn't a sign that the universe abandoned you or that you're being tested unfairly. It's evidence that you're being prepared. You're being forged in the fire, shaped by pressure, refined through difficulty into someone capable of a higher level of compassion, strength, and wisdom than you could have accessed through comfort alone. This isn't about glorifying pain or seeking it out or pretending that suffering is somehow good. Pain hurts, loss devastates, trauma damages. These things are real and their impact shouldn't be minimized. But what changes everything is the meaning you assign to that pain. You can either see it as proof that you're broken, that life is cruel, that you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control, or you can begin to see it as the curriculum of your soul's education, the challenges specifically designed to crack you open so that more light can get in. The hidden truth working behind the scenes of your suffering is that it's connecting you to your humanity, to others who have suffered, to a depth of understanding that's only accessible through walking through fire and emerging on the other side. Every person who's gone through darkness and found their way back becomes a lantern for others still lost in that same darkness. Your pain isn't wasted. It's being transformed into medicine, into wisdom, into the very thing that will allow you to serve and connect at levels that were impossible before. If you're beginning to see your pain differently, not as punishment, but as preparation, write in the comments, "My wounds are becoming wisdom." That shift in perspective is where healing truly begins. When you start to view your pain as preparation rather than punishment, when you begin recognizing it as a teacher instead of an enemy, something profound shifts in how you actually experience that pain. You stop running from it. You stop medicating it, distracting yourself from it, pretending it doesn't exist. And this is where the real transformation happens, because pain is alchemical fire. It burns, yes, but what it burns away is everything superficial, everything false, everything that isn't actually you. What remains after that burning is the essential gold of your character, the qualities and strengths that could only be revealed through pressure and heat. Without this purification process, most of us would remain asleep in superficial comfort, never diving deep enough to discover who we really are beneath all the conditioning and performance. We'd stay on the surface, accumulating experiences and achievements, but never touching the bedrock of our being. Pain forces us down into those depths. It strips away the illusions we've been living inside, the fantasies we've been maintaining about how life should be. And yes, that stripping away is excruciating. But it's also liberating in a way nothing else can be. The key to working with pain, to allowing it to transform you rather than just traumatize you, is counterintuitive. You don't fight it, you don't try to positive think your way out of it, or immediately look for the silver lining or rush to the lesson before you've even felt the impact. You allow yourself to feel it. Completely, without resistance. You let it move through you like a wave, knowing that if you don't fight it, if you don't tense up against it, it will complete its cycle and naturally transform into something else. Most people are so afraid of pain that they contract around it the moment it arrives, which actually makes the pain worse and makes it last longer. It's like having a muscle cramp. If you tense up and resist, the cramp intensifies. If you breathe into it and relax around it, it releases. The same principle applies to emotional and spiritual pain. Your willingness to be present with what hurts, to not immediately try to fix it or escape it, is what allows the alchemical process to work. The fire can only purify what you're willing to put into it. And here's where we encounter another paradox, one that might be even more challenging to accept than the transformative power of pain. You've probably spent your whole life learning how to get what you want, how to achieve your goals, how to manifest your desires. You've been taught to hold on tight, to stay focused, to never let go of what you're pursuing. But the universe doesn't actually work that way. Holding tightly to what you desire is like trying to retain water in your closed fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more desperate your grip becomes, the faster it escapes between your fingers, until you're left with nothing but damp palms and frustration. The paradox is this: only when you open your hand, when you relax your grip and let it go, can water rest peacefully in your open palm. The same principle applies to everything you want in life: love, success, peace, abundance, connection. The more desperately you grasp for it, the more certainly you push it away. Your attachment, your need, your clinging, it creates a frequency of lack that repels the very thing you're trying to attract. You're essentially broadcasting to the universe, "I don't have this, I need this, I'm incomplete without this," and the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, keeps reflecting that state of incompletion back to you. But when you can hold your desires lightly, when you can want something while simultaneously being okay, if it doesn't come or comes in a different form than you expected, everything changes. You shift from operating from lack to operating from wholeness. You're no longer trying to fill a hole inside yourself with external things. You're simply expressing preferences from an already complete state of being. And paradoxically, this is when things start flowing toward you with an ease that feels almost magical. This doesn't mean you stop wanting things or stop taking action toward your goals. It means you stop making your happiness, your worth, your okayness dependent on getting them. You learn to hold your dreams in an open hand, caring deeply but not desperately, moving toward them with intention but not desperation. The transformation in your manifestation ability when you master this paradox is remarkable. You become magnetic instead of needy, attractive instead of desperate, powerful instead of grasping. If you're starting to understand how your attachment might be blocking what you want, write in the comments, "I release my grip." That statement alone begins loosening the stranglehold that's been keeping you stuck. As you practice releasing your grip on outcomes and desires, as you learn to hold things lightly instead of desperately, you naturally begin to reclaim something that's been slowly leaking away from you for years, your personal power. And I need you to understand what personal power actually is, because it's been completely misunderstood in our culture. Personal power has nothing to do with dominating others, controlling circumstances, or forcing your will onto the world. Real personal power is absolute sovereignty over your inner universe. It's the capacity to choose your response to any circumstance without delegating that choice to someone else's behavior or external conditions. Every time you say they made me angry, or this situation makes me stressed, or I can't be happy until this thing happens, you're handing over your power. You're essentially saying that your internal state, your peace, your well-being is dependent on factors outside your control. You've made yourself a puppet of circumstances, a victim of other people's choices, a prisoner of conditions that may never align the way you want them to. And here's the thing. As long as you're seeking validation from others, as long as you're looking outside yourself for security or happiness or proof of your worth, you're ceding this sacred power that's actually yours by birthright. The transformation that happens when you reclaim this sovereignty is immediate and profound. You realize that nobody can make you feel anything. They can do things, say things, behave in ways you don't like, but your response to those actions is always your choice. This doesn't mean you become robotic or emotionless. It means you become conscious. You feel what you feel, but you're no longer at the mercy of those feelings. You're the space in which they arise, not the feelings themselves. You're the sky, not the weather. This reclamation of personal power shifts everything about how you navigate relationships, career, life in general. You stop being reactive and become responsive. You stop waiting for permission and start giving it to yourself. You stop needing others to change so you can feel okay and start choosing to be okay regardless of what others do. This is freedom. This is power. Not power over anyone or anything external, but power over the one domain where you actually have absolute authority. Your inner world, your consciousness, your interpretation of events, your choice of response. But here's where most people get stuck, and it's crucial we address this before moving forward. You can reclaim all the personal power in the world. You can master your responses and sovereignty over your inner state. But if you don't have a foundation of genuine self-love, all of that power will be built on sand. Self-love isn't some optional add-on to your spiritual practice, some nice-to-have quality that would be lovely if you could cultivate it. It's the sacred ground from which you build every single aspect of your existence. And let me be very clear about what self-love actually is, because there's massive confusion around this. Self-love is not narcissism, it's not egocentrism or vanity or thinking you're better than everyone else. It's not posting selfies with inspirational captions about how amazing you are. Real self-love is the reverent recognition of your inherent value, completely independent of your achievements or failures, your appearance or abilities, what you've accomplished, or how badly you've messed up. It's seeing yourself as worthy of love, respect, kindness, and care simply because you exist, not because you've earned it. Without this foundation, everything you build externally will be an attempt to prove your worth instead of an expression of it. Your relationships will be transactions where you're constantly trying to earn love instead of sharing it. Your career will be a desperate attempt to validate your existence instead of a joyful contribution of your gifts. Your entire life becomes a performance trying to convince others and yourself that you deserve to take up space on this planet. And no amount of external validation ever fills that internal void, because you're trying to get from outside what can only come from within. The impact of developing real self-love, the kind that's unconditional and unshakable, ripples through everything. You stop tolerating mistreatment because you know you deserve better. You stop chasing people who don't choose you because you've already chosen yourself. You stop abandoning your own needs and boundaries, trying to please everyone else, because your relationship with yourself becomes the primary relationship you're committed to maintaining. This isn't selfish. It's the foundation of a healthy existence. If you're ready to build your life on this foundation instead of on the shifting sands of external validation, write in the comments, "I am worthy now." Not when you accomplish more, not when you fix yourself, not when others finally see it. Now, exactly as you are. when you establish that foundation of self-love, when you recognize your inherent worth independent of external validation, something remarkable becomes accessible to you. The noise quiets down enough that you can finally hear what's been trying to reach you all along. In the silent sanctuary of your heart, beneath all the mental chatter and cultural conditioning and inherited beliefs, there dwells a voice that knows the way home. Not your way home to some physical place, but home to yourself, to truth, to the essence of what you actually are beneath all the stories and identities. This voice doesn't shout or argue or present logical cases. It operates in a completely different language, the language of hunches that arise from nowhere, of meaningful dreams that carry messages your conscious mind couldn't articulate, of synchronicities that feel too perfectly timed to be random. This is your internal compass, your direct hotline to universal intelligence, and it's been broadcasting to you your entire life. You just couldn't hear it clearly because you were listening to everyone else's voices telling you who to be, what to believe, how to live. The journey we've been on together through this video has been, in essence, the process of clearing away all the interference so you can tune in to this frequency. Every false identity you've questioned, every shadow aspect you've integrated, every attachment you've released, every wound you've acknowledged, all of it has been stripping away the static so this clear signal can finally come through. And here's what that voice will never tell you. It will never tell you to follow someone else's path. It will never insist you need a guru or a teacher or a specific practice to access the divine. It will never make your spirituality dependent on believing the right things or performing the right rituals. This is where we need to talk about spirituality beyond the confines of organized religion, because many people on this journey carry tremendous guilt or confusion about their relationship with traditional religious structures. True spirituality, the kind that actually transforms you rather than just giving you a new identity to wear, isn't a set of dogmas you must believe to be accepted into some exclusive club. It's a direct experience you must live, moment by moment, breath by breath. It doesn't require intermediaries standing between you and the divine, interpreting mysteries you're supposedly too small or sinful or ignorant to understand on your own. While religion, at its best, can provide community, ritual, and a container for spiritual exploration, it often gives you answers to memorize, doctrines to accept, rules to follow. And for some people, in certain seasons of life, that structure is exactly what's needed. But spirituality, real spirituality, works in the opposite direction. It awakens within you the questions that will lead you to your own inner truth. It doesn't hand you someone else's enlightenment and tell you to believe in it. It ignites your own direct experience of the sacred, whatever that means to you, however it shows up in your unique existence. The transformation that happens when you shift from borrowed beliefs to direct experience is revolutionary. You stop performing spirituality and start living it. You stop trying to believe things that don't resonate because you're supposed to, and start trusting what you actually know in your bones. You stop seeking permission from religious authorities to have a relationship with the divine, and you claim your birthright to that connection, direct and unmediated. This doesn't make you arrogant or heretical, it makes you authentic. The impact of this shift reverberates through every decision you make. You're no longer trying to be good according to someone else's standards. You're aligning with your own inner compass, which often leads you to the same places: compassion, service, love, truth, but from a completely different motivation. Not fear of punishment or desire for reward, not trying to earn your way into heaven or prove your devotion, but simply because when you're connected to your essence, when you're living from that place of direct knowing, these qualities naturally emerge. They're not something you have to force or fake. They're what you are when all the pretense falls away. The hidden truth working behind the scenes here is that you've always had direct access to the divine, to universal intelligence, to source, whatever language resonates with you. That access was never dependent on your religious affiliation, your spiritual practices, your belief systems, or your moral perfection. It was always there, always available, always streaming, like a radio station that never stops broadcasting. You just had to clear the interference and tune to the right frequency. If this resonates with your own journey, away from inherited beliefs and toward direct experience, write in the comments, "My spirituality is my own." That declaration is an act of spiritual sovereignty. When you claim your spiritual sovereignty, when you establish that direct connection with your inner wisdom without needing external validation or permission, one of the first things that naturally emerges is a profound sense of gratitude. But this isn't the superficial gratitude you've been taught, the kind where you're supposed to make a list once a year of things you're thankful for and then forget about it until next Thanksgiving. This is gratitude as a fundamental lens through which you perceive reality, a transformative practice that literally rewrites your relationship with existence itself. Gratitude, when practiced as a lifestyle rather than an occasional exercise, becomes the perceptive filter that transforms your entire experience. It's the conscious decision to seek and find the hidden gift in every situation, every encounter, every challenge that life presents. And here's where it gets really interesting. This includes the difficult experiences, the painful ones, the situations you'd never choose if you were designing your life according to your ego's preferences. Real gratitude doesn't just show up when things are going well. It emerges as a practice of finding meaning and value, especially in the moments that initially feel like setbacks or losses. This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't pretending that bad things are actually good or that you should be happy about suffering. It's a much more mature understanding that every experience carries information, every challenge contains a teaching, every difficulty is refining something within you that needed refining. When you approach life with this lens of gratitude, you're not denying the hard parts. You're extracting wisdom from them instead of just being victimized by them. You're actively looking for how this situation, as unwanted as it might be, is serving your evolution in ways you can't fully see yet. The transformation in your daily experience when gratitude becomes your default mode is extraordinary. Your attention shifts from what's missing to what's present. Your energy moves from complaint to appreciation. Your entire frequency elevates because you're no longer vibrating at the level of lack and resentment. You're resonating with abundance and recognition. And here's the thing about frequency. It determines what you attract, what you notice, what opportunities become available to you. When you're in gratitude, you see possibilities that were invisible when you were in complaint. But the real revelation comes when you combine this practice of gratitude with an understanding of what I call the law of the mirror. This is one of the most powerful truths you'll ever encounter, and it explains so much about why your life looks the way it does. The outer world, every person you encounter, every situation you find yourself in, every pattern that keeps repeating, is a perfect reflection of your inner landscape. Nothing out there is random. Everything is showing you something about yourself. Every person you meet is a mirror. The qualities you admire passionately in others, the traits that inspire you or attract you, those aren't just observations about them. They're recognitions of qualities that already exist within you, either already manifested or present as potential waiting to be claimed. When you see someone being courageous and you feel that pull of admiration, that's your own courage recognizing itself in another form, calling you to express it more fully in your own life. When someone's creativity amazes you, that's your own creative potential seeing what's possible. And here's the uncomfortable part that most people resist. What irritates you deeply in others, what triggers you, What you judge most harshly, those are parts of your own shadow that you haven't yet recognized or integrated with love. The person whose arrogance infuriates you is showing you where you have unacknowledged arrogance or where you're suppressing your own healthy confidence. The individual whose neediness annoys you is reflecting back your own disowned needs or your judgment of your own vulnerability. Every strong reaction you have to another person is information about yourself. This doesn't mean you're responsible for other people's behavior. It means you're responsible for your reaction to it. Two people can encounter the same individual and have completely different responses based on what that person is reflecting back to each of them. The mirror isn't lying, it's showing you exactly what needs to be seen, healed, integrated, or celebrated within yourself. This is how the universe teaches you, through the people and situations it places in your path as perfectly calibrated mirrors. When you start living with this awareness, everything becomes your teacher. Every challenging person becomes a guide showing you what still needs work. Every difficult situation becomes a classroom. Every pattern that repeats becomes a lesson. You haven't fully learned yet. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Everything is meaningful. If you're recognizing your life as a hall of mirrors reflecting your inner world back to you, write in the comments, "I see myself everywhere." That acknowledgement is the beginning of taking full responsibility for your experience. When you truly understand that everything outside you is a reflection of what's inside you, when you grasp that every person and situation is a mirror showing you yourself, something profound shifts in how you relate to the concept of abundance. Most people spend their entire lives chasing abundance in the wrong direction, looking for it in bank accounts, possessions, achievements, status symbols. They believe that if they could just accumulate enough external things, they'd finally feel abundant, but it doesn't work that way. True abundance isn't measured by what you possess. It's experienced as richness in your heart, as an internal sensation of fullness that exists independent of external circumstances. This is the hidden truth that the wealthy often discover too late. You can have everything and still feel empty, or you can have very little and feel completely full. Abundance is a state of consciousness, not a state of your finances. It's a deep confidence in life's flow, an unshakable knowing that you're always being provided exactly what you need for your evolution in this moment. Not necessarily what you want, not always what your ego demands, but what you actually need to grow, to learn, to become more fully yourself. The paradox is the same one we've encountered throughout this entire journey. While you seek outside yourself for the signal that you're abundant, you're vibrating at the frequency of lack. Your very searching broadcasts to the universe that you don't have it, you're incomplete, something's missing, and the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, keeps showing you more lack, more incompleteness, more evidence that you need something external to make you whole. But when you can cultivate that sense of abundance internally first, when you can feel full and grateful and provided for regardless of your external circumstances, everything shifts. The abundance you were chasing suddenly starts flowing toward you because you've changed your frequency from lack to fullness. This isn't magical thinking or manifestation gimmicks. It's physics. It's psychology. It's the natural consequence of shifting your inner state. When you feel abundant internally, you make different decisions. You take inspired action instead of desperate action. You say yes to opportunities that align with your worth and no to situations that diminish you. You show up differently, speak differently, carry yourself differently. People respond to that energy. Opportunities appear, resources flow, not because you're manipulating reality, but because you've become a vibrational match for what you've been seeking. And here's something most people on spiritual journeys miss entirely. This abundance, this inner richness, this gratitude practice, this understanding of mirrors. All of it requires one crucial element that's often completely neglected: your body. You cannot have sustainable spiritual awakening, emotional healing, or mental transformation while ignoring or abusing the physical vehicle through which you're experiencing all of this. You're not a soul trapped in a body like a ghost in a machine. You are a sacred unity where the physical, mental, and spiritual dimensions intertwine in an inseparable dance. Your body isn't just a disposable vehicle you're stuck with until you can transcend it and float off into pure consciousness. Your body is the tangible temple where your spirit experiences material reality, where consciousness gets to taste food and feel textures and hear music and hold other beings. Honoring this trinity, body, mind, and spirit as one integrated whole, is the foundation of all true healing and all sustainable transformation. You can't ignore your body's needs and expect your spirit to soar. You can't abuse your physical health and expect your mental clarity to remain sharp. You can't disconnect from your embodied experience and expect to feel whole. The impact of bringing conscious awareness to your body, of treating it with the same reverence you bring to your spiritual practice, changes everything. The stress you've been carrying starts releasing from your tissues. The wisdom stored in your body becomes accessible. The intuition that speaks through physical sensations becomes clearer. You realize that your body has been trying to communicate with you all along through aches, pains, tension, illness, not to punish you, but to guide you toward what needs attention, what needs to shift, what needs to be released or integrated. When you honor the body-mind-spirit connection as the unified whole it actually is, you stop seeing yourself as fragmented parts that need to be separately managed and start experiencing yourself as the integrated being you've always been. Your spiritual practices become embodied, your physical health becomes sacred, your mental clarity becomes grounded. Everything works together because you've stopped fighting against your own nature as a being who is simultaneously spirit and flesh, consciousness and matter, infinite and finite. If you're ready to honor your whole self, body, mind, and spirit as the sacred unity it is, write in the comments, "I am whole as I am." That recognition is where complete healing begins. When you begin living as this integrated whole, when you honor the sacred unity of your body, mind, and spirit, something profound starts happening that extends far beyond your individual experience. You begin to understand that every moment of your existence, every interaction you have, every thought you think and emotion you feel is leaving an imprint on something much larger than yourself. Your most enduring legacy isn't going to be written in stone monuments or recorded in official documents. It's being imprinted right now, in every moment, into the energetic field of collective consciousness through the vibration you're emitting. Think about the people who've had the deepest impact on your life. What do you actually remember about them? Probably not their job titles or their bank accounts or their list of accomplishments. You remember how they made you feel. You remember the quality of presence they brought into a room. You remember whether they saw you, really saw you, or looked through you. You remember the warmth or the coldness, the judgment or the acceptance, the love or the fear that emanated from them. That's what leaves a lasting mark on another human being. Not what they achieved, but what they embodied. This is your real legacy, the one that matters far more than anything you'll accumulate or accomplish in measurable terms. The frequency of love you embody, the consciousness you bring to your daily interactions, the presence you offer to the people whose lives intersect with yours. This is what ripples out into the collective field and continues reverberating long after your physical form is gone. Every time you choose love over fear, presence over distraction, authenticity over performance, you're not just improving your own life, you're raising the frequency of the entire field of consciousness that we all share. The transformation that happens when you truly understand this is humbling and empowering simultaneously. Your life stops being about personal achievement and starts being about contribution to the whole. Your purpose isn't to become somebody special or accomplish something extraordinary that sets you apart. It's to be so fully yourself, so authentically present, so genuinely loving that you become a permission slip for others to do the same. You become living proof that it's possible to be real in a world of pretense, to be vulnerable in a culture of armor, to be kind in an environment of competition. And here we arrive at the culmination of everything we've been exploring together, the moment where all these revelations converge into one supreme recognition. This is the final encounter, the one you've been moving toward since the moment this video found you, since the universe first whispered that there was something more waiting to be remembered. The seeker and the sought are not separate. They never were. The one looking and the one being looked, for are the same consciousness experiencing itself from different angles. Every step of this journey, the collapse, the grief, the shadow work, the surrender, the gratitude, the mirrors, the integration, has been leading you back to the starting point, except now you see it with completely new eyes. You thought you were traveling to some distant destination called enlightenment or awakening or truth. But the journey was actually a spiral that brought you back to yourself, to the recognition that what you were seeking was the awareness that's been seeking it. You are not separate from the divine intelligence you've been reaching for. You are that intelligence wearing a temporary human disguise, playing the game of forgetting and remembering. The final separation that dissolves in this moment isn't between you and God, or you and the universe, or you and truth. It's between you and the illusion that you were ever separated from who you truly are. Every teaching, every practice, every moment of suffering and confusion has been the divine playing hide and seek with itself. Consciousness pretending not to know what it is, so it could experience the joy of rediscovering its own nature. And you, right now, in this moment, are that rediscovery happening in real time. This recognition doesn't make you special or different from anyone else. It reveals that everyone is the same consciousness having different experiences, that separation is the grandest illusion, that what you've been calling my life is actually the universe living itself through a unique perspective it calls you. The impact of this realization doesn't hit all at once like lightning. It unfolds gradually, revealing deeper layers, until one day you look around and realize that everything is different because you are different, because you've remembered what you always were. If this truth is resonating in your bones right now, write in the comments, "I remember who I am." If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with me through this entire exploration, that's not an accident either. The fact that you're still here, still listening, still absorbing these words, means something significant about where you are in your journey. Most people would have clicked away after the first few minutes, back to their distractions, back to the comfort of not questioning too deeply. But you stayed, and that tells me you're serious about this transformation, about waking up, about remembering who you truly are. I create these videos because I know how isolating this journey can feel sometimes. When everyone around you is still asleep, still playing the old games, still believing the old stories, it helps to know there's a community of people who understand, who are walking this same path, asking the same questions, experiencing the same revelations. If this resonated with you, if you want more content like this that goes deep instead of staying surface, hit that subscribe button. This is where we gather seekers, awakeners, people who refuse to accept the shallow answers and keep diving for truth. And do me a favor, leave a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me, so I know you made it to the end." I read every single comment. And there's something powerful about declaring these things publicly, about putting your intention into words where it becomes real, tangible, witnessed. Plus, it helps me understand that this content is landing, that it's serving the purpose it was created for. If you found value in what we explored together today, go ahead and hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, though that helps, but as an energetic exchange. You received something, and that simple click is your way of acknowledging the connection we created here. It matters more than you might think. There's another video right here that takes this even deeper, exploring what happens after this recognition, after the remembering begins. The journey doesn't end with awakening. It actually gets more interesting from there. Click and continue with me. I'll see you there.